Hey, I'm Mayor Briton Williams. Join me as we explore everything North Augusta. We'll talk state of the city. We'll highlight our vibrant events and areas of the community, showcase our hidden gems, and promote the buzz on our local businesses and citizens. We will share and learn together about our amazing town and everything that makes us South Carolina's riverfront. Let's get started.
Down by the river, where the stories unfold. Come explore, see what you'll find.
Hey everybody, I'm so excited about this episode because we are literally going to explore everything about Hamburg-Carrsville. This is a story that needs to be told. It's been told because of these two gentlemen, my guests today, but we need to get this story out even more to citizens in North Augusta and people who love history, who want to travel for history. They need to understand the impact of Old Hamburg, New Hamburg, how it became Carrsville, and where that is. So my two guests today, first of all, is on the far right is Mr. Wayne O'Brien. Wayne, if there's a historian that knows more about this topic, I hadn't found him. Every time I listen to him, whether it's a seminar or anything he writes, I learn something more that I didn't know before. So he is going to really walk us through what about Hamburg, what happened to that community, how that transitioned up here to what they call New Hamburg, later Carrsville. So he's going to talk through that with us. And then the esteemed gentleman to my right, Dr. Alexander Pope, over close to 40 years.
38.
38, minister here at First Providence, which is the oldest church, goes back over 162 years. Dr. Pope, when I say that he literally knows Carrsville, not only has he walked the Carrsville streets, he has witnessed to the people living here. Many of them are members of this church. So I was telling some folks beforehand, of all our podcasts so far, there really are not two more knowledgeable people about the topic than these two. So I am just so excited. So I want to welcome each of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited about this. And we're going to jump right in. Wayne O'Brien, I'm going to start with you, sir. I'm going to kind of give you an open-ended entry here. Just talk to us about Hamburg, the predecessor of North Augusta, about Hamburg, why there's no longer Hamburg, how that's now Carrsville, maybe some data points, some timelines. Just kind of educate us on what it was and why we're here where we are now, if you would, sir.
Okay. Well, it's a 200-year-old story, so I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. But, well, Hamburg originally was founded by an immigrant from Germany by the name of Henry Schultz. And Henry Schultz, at the time, was living in Augusta. Henry Schultz had a dispute with some of the vendors in Augusta and some of the businessmen, and he decided to build Hamburg as a spite town, really to be a competition for Augusta. Okay. And in order for him to steal the trade from the back countries in the further west, to bring it from Georgia over to South Carolina, he needed to build a bridge. And so he built this 5th Street Bridge area. It was called the Schultz Bridge. It was a toll bridge. And then when things would come into Augusta, he would bring them across the bridge to Hamburg and then send them down to Charleston. So Hamburg became a boom town, flourished relatively quick. But when we started to do a lot of the research on Hamburg, because, it was also Augusta and Hamburg were slave markets, the story that was written was that Henry Schultz built the bridge by himself, and then he built the town by himself. But we found, of course, the enslaved workers that was there. So there's an African-American component to the entire story of Hamburg from its inception, from the bridge. Then later, the town was built in 1821. Well, it was chartered in 1821. And Hamburg flourished until about the 1840s. And the reason it actually declined is because in 1833, Charleston merchants decided to build a railroad from Charleston to Hamburg. It was the longest railroad in the world at the time, and the first one to carry passengers, so it gave Hamburg an air of prestige. And as long as Hamburg was the terminus, the last stop, everybody had to come to Hamburg to put their things on the train to send them to Charleston. But when the railroad extended over to Augusta and then to Columbia and Greenville, Hamburg became just a stop along the line, and it began to decline. And by 1851, Henry Schultz, who had lost and made multiple fortunes, he passed away, and Hamburg really became sort of a ghost town. When the Civil War ended and enslaved Africans were now free, a lot of them began to settle in Hamburg and kind of resurrect the town, and they rechartered it. And Hamburg had a second life as a freedman village, but it became a political power spot for Reconstruction. So during 1868 election, African Americans won majority of the seats because they had the majority of the population. Just before the war, they didn't have any rights. And three of the elected officials in 1868 were Prince Rivers, Samuel Lee, and John Gardner. All three lived in Hamburg. All three attended Providence Church. The church was founded really during the slave period in 1860. The building that we are in was the 1860 church. And then, so Hamburg had this new life, but then there came the Hamburg Massacre that a lot of things have been focused on. Hamburg Massacre was the beginning of the end of Reconstruction. It was the first event in a series of events that led to the end of Reconstruction. After Reconstruction ended, African American rights were stripped away, and that started the whole Jim Crow segregated period. And so all of those histories are found in this general area that we're in. So in 1929, there was a major flood. It was actually a double flood, late 1929. Hamburg was prone to flooding at the time because there wasn't a dam up in the Clarks Hill area at the time. 1929, also the start of the Great Depression. With that flood, the Red Cross came down to help the flood victims. And because there were less donations coming in, they said that it would be really throwing good money after bad to try to rebuild when you're going to have the same problem again. So they came up with a solution that you take your homes and your businesses, anything you want to take out of Hamburg, including the church, take them apart piece by piece, take all the material up the bluff about 75 feet or so, and rebuild them in this area on higher ground. And so people went back and got their homes and their businesses. And of course, they said, we're not going to leave our church down there. So they came down and took the church apart, laid the wood out on the field outside, and then reconstructed the church here. And so this became what they call New Hamburg. And some of the newspaper accounts call it Hamburg on the Heights. But New Hamburg is established in 1930, but its history actually goes back, because the buildings that were brought out were from Hamburg. It goes back to the 1821 date. When we were trying to get the historic markers done, it was hard to tell people that story, because they were saying, well, did the community begin in 1930? So we should start from 1930. And I kept trying to tell them that, no, they took the entire community up the hill with them. Right. And, but we started to find the articles in the newspaper about how that was the only way that you would get a plot in this town, is if you took your homes apart and brought them up here, and then you would get a lot up here. So once we found that, of course, then we got the okay to do some of the markers. So that's how it became Hamburg. And then two of the people that donated money for the land to create this new community was the Red Cross director, William Carr. Well, I think I don't know his first name. His last name was Carr. And William Carpenter, who was the African-American businessman who had roots in Hamburg, but he had made his fortune over in Augusta. And so William Carpenter had actually helped some Hamburg survivors move earlier to a different area, and they named that area Carpentersville. It's maybe a half mile from where we're sitting. And so when they had a second community, instead of calling it Carpentersville, they combined those two names, or Carr and Carpenter, and called this one Carrsville. And so when we got the designation to get this community designated as a heritage district, we wanted to capture the old history and the more modern history, and so we call it the Hamburg-Carrsville.
So when did Carrsville and Carpenters, when did that merge? When did that, what time? What was the time?
Well, they didn't merge.
Not merge, but they used the name.
It was an earlier flood,
Okay.
and I believe it was 26.
Okay.
When 23, 26, when William Carpenter helped some of the victims move to the area that's now Carpentersville. And then 6 years later, 29, they had the second flood. And like I said, since the Red Cross purchased some of the land, and William Carpenter purchased some of the other land. And since both of them had a hand in this new community, they just combined that name. What they did, I'm not sure if they ever really officially changed that name or not. Because what we see is the early newspaper accounts when they're creating the community, when they're moving everything, they're just calling it New Hamburg or Hamburg on the Heights. And when you go into the 1930 census, in this community, it has New Hamburg written on it. And then by the 1940 census, it has Carrsville written on it.
Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly why that was changed, but
Okay, let me ask you, kind of talk about the society building. Was that literally one of the buildings that materials got brought up as well? Yeah. Or, okay.
Yes, the society building, really it's almost like a clubhouse and a lodge for these different groups that are organized. You know, back during the Jim Crow era, African Americans had to have everything was self-contained in their community. So the society building would almost act as like a city hall for the community. Okay. When they had to have different meetings about things and discuss certain things, they would meet in the society building. And so the two, we call these the two iconic buildings that came up out of Hamburg. The society building was almost like their civic area, and it also had their schoolhouse was housed in the society building. So this was the religious heart of the community was Providence Church, and then the kind of civic heart of the community was the society building.
Okay. Let me ask you, talk about Aiken County. When Aiken County was founded, I mean, it was Prince. I mean, there were a number of folks from Hamburg, right, that literally helped found Aiken County. Yeah, so tell a little bit about that, if you would, because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, well, you know, of course, early on, Hamburg would have been in Edgefield County, old Edgefield County. In 1871, during Reconstruction, when African Americans had that majority, they decided they wanted to carve up some of the larger counties. They decided they wanted to carve up Edgefield County. And Aiken County was the first county that was created out of the large old Edgefield County. Edgefield District had the same boundaries. And so in 1871, they began that process. Prince Rivers, who, like I say, lived in Hamburg, was the first mayor of Hamburg after the Civil War. And so he became, they had 3 committees, and he was on all 3 of them. He was the only one on all 3. But he was like the principal guy that laid out carved the boundaries for what would be Aiken County. Samuel Lee was also on that committee. Samuel Lee was Speaker of the House in 1872, also a Hamburg resident. And there was actually another guy, I'm trying to remember his name, but it was 3 of the recognized 8 founders, because there were 8 recognized founding officers of Hamburg. 7 of those men were African American, and 3 of them came out of Hamburg. So Hamburg had kind of this outsized political power for a small community. It had a lot of power politically in the state.
Wow, that's fascinating. We're going to get back to the society building more in a little bit later when we talk about the Heritage District. So, Dr. Pope, let me just kind of ask you, if you would, first of all, maybe tell a little bit about what got you to this area. I mean, you were minister at, I guess originally was Providence, but you now call it First Providence because there's a second church. A little bit about yourself, and then kind of your experience as you met Wayne, what you learned over your tenure here, and just share with us your take about how important First Providence Church is with this community.
Very good, and thanks for the opportunity. First and foremost, before I get into my aspects related to uh, First Providence, let's talk a little bit about how did First Providence become to be First Providence. Uh, First Providence is a church that came out of Silver Bluff. Uh, Out of Silver Bluff also came Springfield Baptist Church. And out of Springfield Baptist Church came Thankful Baptist Church. And it's a little bit of a story behind that because when the parishioners of Thankful went to Springfield and asked for permission to start Thankful, and I'm bringing this in because First Providence came out of Thankful.
Right.
They told them that we want to name our church independent. And the parishioners out of Springfield said, you are thankful that we are giving you the opportunity to be organized as a church. So you should be called Thankful. So this is how Thankful got the name of Thankful. And from that, First Providence, who Mr. Wayne have already stated, was housed in Hamburg. They had to move from Hamburg every Sunday to worship at Thankful. During that time, there was a bridge that they had to cross. And in order for them to cross that bridge, they had to pay a toll. So the parishioners of First Providence in Hamburg, Providence at that time in Hamburg, went to Thankful and said, give us the approval to establish a church here in Hamburg. And this is how they came up with the name Providence. So now, upon receiving that name Providence, Providence in turn gave birth to Second Providence. And out of Second Providence came Carpenterville, which these two churches are still in existence now. And it's strange to mention that with the three churches working together in harmony as they have over the years, First Providence this year would be 164. They have been, all three churches have been a great community working together to enhance the growth of this area. I came to First Providence in September of 1984. When I came to this area, I didn't know Wayne at that time. I don't even know if you were in the area at that
No, I came in 90.
You came in 90, okay. But during the time prior to Wayne coming and being the historian in this area, which we were very appreciative of, we had started talking about how we can get a greater interest in this community about Hamburg. I did not know as much about Hamburg until I met Wayne. And when Wayne started doing the research, even though I pastored in this neighborhood and in this community, when Wayne started doing research and we started holding meetings here and in different areas around the city, I learned a lot about the Hamburg. I had heard about the Hamburg massacre, but I didn't know the ins and outs of it. It was not taught in our history book. And I'm a history major by right, so to speak, but it was not taught in our history book. All it said was there was a massacre in a town called Hamburg across the river from Augusta, Georgia. But when the research was done, we learned about what really transpired and how this community was actually shaken. What is interesting about the history of First Providence and my involvement is how the community of First Providence moving from Hamburg up to this location. One of the oldest living deacons that I had, Deacon Jerry Cannon, you probably have heard of his name. He stated that he was a teenager when the flood occurred in 1929. And he said that he remembered very well when gentlemen from this community, actually Hamburg, that come up and built what is now Carrsville, got together. And they went down to Hamburg and they dismantled this building. They dismantled the old society building, board by board, bought that material up here on the ground at some point in time and allowed it to dry out. Once the material dried out, they took that material and constructed this building back to its original state. If we would take the sheetrocks off of these walls, we would see the old slat boards that this building was originally built out of down in Hamburg.
God, that's amazing.
And what is fascinating about this is if you talk to scientists and archaeologists now, they would tell you that was practically impossible to do. But with God, all things are possible.
Amen.
And truly, he made it possible so that we would still have this building and we would still have the society building. The impact that this community have had by the existing of these two buildings allows us to know, number one, that all things are possible with God, and number two, you can do anything if you put your heart and mind to it. Can you believe this church that you're sitting in, or this church building that you're sitting in, has had only 15 pastors in 160 plus years? There are only 2 pastors that have served 30 years or more. That was W.B. Coleman and myself, Alexander Pope. W.B. Coleman served 30 years. I served 38 years with this church family. Working with the mayors of this city, when I came to this city in 1984, Tom Green, the late Tom Green, was the mayor of the city. I met with him and asked if he would join with me and let's tour this area. When I came to this city in 1984, all of these streets through here were dirt. I asked Mayor Green to come here, meet me on the steps, and let's walk the streets. Mayor Green came here, and when he started to get out of his car, I noticed that he had his head down. And I walked over to him and I said, Honorable Green, I said, is something wrong? He said, Alex, I've been in this city and I don't remember how long at that time because he's not from this area. He said, I've been in this city, and he said, I'll be honest with you. I've never been in this area here. He said, we're going to do something about down through here. We never did walk the streets because he said, I don't need to walk the streets. I have seen enough. And he was instrumental in getting these streets paved through this neighborhood. And he said to me, there's no funding in the budget to do any major work in this area. He said, but I am going to set things in motion so that we can start doing some things on this side of town. And he did. He did. And of course, after Tom Green came Mayor Lark Jones. He was very instrumental. Wayne, you met him, you worked with him, and I'm sure you all did a lot of great things in the area through his leadership. But he had a great concern in doing things here. After Mayor Lark came Bob Petty. Bob Petty worked tremendously. He worked untiringly to try to get a focus in this area. He was the one that set things in motion for what we have now as and correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne, I'm a little bit younger than you are, so I don't remember as well as you did.
Heritage designation.
Heritage District.
Heritage District. He was very instrumental in making sure that something was done. Then after him came our Honorable Mayor, Briton Williams. He picked up the baton. And I'm not saying what I'm saying because he's sitting here, because I will talk bad about him in his face or behind it. No, I wouldn't do that. But, but he has picked up the baton, and he too has pushed things forward and are still pushing things forward for the interest of this community. Our objective in this community is to get the North Augusta community and the surrounding communities around this great nation of ours to understand the impact of what happened here and what we are doing to make sure that people are informed of what has happened. So many people don't know, have not heard about what transpired in Hamburg. And Deacon Jerry Cannon, as I mentioned earlier, said to me, I asked him one day as we was walking here in front of the church, Deacon Jerry, why is it so quiet? Nobody said anything about what transpired, and we're just learning so much about it now. He said, Reverend Pope, back then, we were told as people living in this community never to talk about what transpired in Hamburg. He said, we were further told, if we hear of any information being told about what transpired, we're going to kill out your family. That's what he told me. I said, Deacon Jerry Cannon, I can't believe. He said, I'm telling you what we were told. So these are some of the things that we have to contend with. People will not talk, especially if you threaten their families. They're not going to talk. And as I said earlier, it's not written in the history book. So how would you know? The only way you can learn about what transpired and what we are doing to make sure that others learn about it is podcasts like these. And I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity. I thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for what you've done, and certainly we're moving forward to do greater things.
You give me a number of things to segue. For the folks who are just listening to this podcast, you need to get on your computer and pull this up on YouTube, because Jen is going to have pictures of the buildings. Now, we're not going to knock down any of the walls to show the wood, but the stained glass and aspects. So you really need to see where we are. You see some of it behind, but it's pretty amazing. Wayne, I want to come back to the Society Building and the Heritage District in just a second, but I meant that Wayne, Dr. Pope, explained how he got here. I actually thought you were in this community a little bit longer, so tell us, one, I believe Charleston area, because you shared about your mother and amazing talents. I've seen a lot of her work she's done, but what got you here? And then what kind of triggered your passion to say, hey, you know what, I need to do some homework. I need to research to tell this story, because that's been one of your biggest passions. So give us a little bit of that before we transition to something else.
Okay, now I know this is the pastor, the reverend, because God led me through all this stuff. So let me get that real quick. See, I was actually born in Charleston. My mother's side of the family was from Charleston. And I did not know that my father's family was in this area. Okay. Because my father and mother met at South Carolina State. At the time, my grandparents lived in Florence. So by the time we came up, me and my siblings came along, we always thought that he was from Florence, because our grandparents lived there. But the grandparents were originally from Clarks Hill. Okay. And they had moved to Florence. His job transferred them, and they ended up moving to Florence. I asked my father, must be 1990s, when I asked my father about his grandparents so I could do a little genealogical research. And he said, well, his name was John O'Brien. He said, but if you go back to where you live now, he said all the family's buried in these different churches around there going back to the 1700s. And so I said, well, why are they here in the CSRA? And he said, oh, because I came here as an infant to Florence. I was not from Florence originally. So when I moved to North Augusta, I came in 1990. I had recently gotten married. My wife was working at SRS, and she was commuting back and forth from Columbia. So we were living in Columbia at the time. And one day she said she wanted to move closer to the job. And I had a home improvement business, so I could always up and start it up here, so I could move my business. But I didn't want to come. Because I was living in Charleston and Columbia. I used to be in bigger cities. And then they had an incident here. It was a racial incident at the Buffalo Room, right around 89 or something. And I was saying, oh, I don't know about North Augusta, and me mixing, And then she said, yeah, but I'm getting tired going up and down the road. So I said, okay, so since you want to go, we're going. And then I found North Augusta to be completely different than what I imagined when I read that article. But when I moved there, my great-grandmother was a daughter of emancipated slaves, and she lived till I was 20. She was also a college graduate and a school principal, and she retired when I was like a year old and started taking care of me. And so she started teaching me African-American history at the age of 3. And she said, because I have to teach you, because when you go to school, it's not going to be in there. So by the time I got to school, I knew more African-American history than the teachers, than college graduates, because I'd been taught. And so my great-grandmother told me, when you grow up and move away, anytime you go to any city, if you see any monuments or markers or anything, make sure you read them, because they don't just put these things up. There's something in there. So she kind of trained me to do this. When I moved to North Augusta in 1990, of course, going through, looking at monuments, I happened across the Mackie Merriweather Monument. I said, man, has anybody read this thing? So that kind of started that particular move. When my dad told me that his family was here, and I went into the Freedmen records, and I found this document that had John O'Brien on it. He's told my great-grandfather's name was John O'Brien. And then when I looked at where they were living in Hamburg. And this was 1872. And here I was in North Augusta, basically I moved from home and came home. So my whole paternal line was from here, and my maternal line was Charleston and Newberry. So I came home, and now I wanted to know more about this place that my ancestors lived in. And as I was going through the documents there, I ran across the Hamburg massacre. And one of my great-great-uncles was the warden, one of the wardens in Hamburg during the massacre, and testified in 1876, 77 with that to the Senate committee. Okay. And so as I began to learn more about Hamburg and the massacre, then I wanted to know what's the real story here. Because it was such a pivotal event. Like I said, when American history was going in a particular direction once emancipation happened. And African Americans had to hit the ground running. They came out of slavery, and then they had to learn how to read and write quickly, and then now they were getting into politics, and they were doing these things, and then this Hamburg massacre happens, Reconstruction is overthrown, and the arc of history changed. And so even though it was a local event, it had national implications. And that's why we want to tell that Hamburg story, because it really is a larger story that happened in a local place. But the President of the United States and things like that were also talking about the Hamburg massacre. So it was national news, and it really set things back almost 100 years, because African Americans had all of their civil rights in the 1860s. The public school system was created in 1868, and all of the schools were integrated in 1868. And then African Americans could vote. But after that massacre and the overturning of Reconstruction, everything got segregated. And the way they taught us in school, it was almost like they went from slavery to segregation and then the civil rights movement. But really they had about this 10, 12-year window where they had all of their civil rights. It was taken away, and then they began to win back in the 1960s things that they used to have in the 1860s. So that Hamburg incident and massacre kind of turned the tables on African American history for nearly a century.
Wow, fantastic. That's amazing. Thank you. Let me ask y'all this. You mentioned Mayor Pettit. It was early in his, Mayor Pettit served 4 years, so I'm not going to be exactly right on these time frame, but it was one of the Mayor Pettit's focus, working with you and Wayne, was to, and I guess what I'm trying to find out is, there is a foundation called the Hamburg-Carrsville African American Heritage District, but there's a foundation. Was the foundation already in place? Kind of what got that started? And then how did that kind of parlay into Mayor Pettit's focus with y'all of, we need to make this a district? And because I want people also to understand about the foundation that is an open entity that is looking for donations, that is looking for volunteers. Because if we don't get that foundation the amount of money and get that built the way it needs to, because that's going to be a big part of what the vision of making this an area that we can tell the story.
A destination.
Yeah, a destination. So kind of talk through that piece of it, if you don't mind, either one of you or both. And that's a lot of questions, but.
I can do some things here. The foundation, Providence, and he'll tell you more about the foundation, but that was actually established prior. Okay. And the reason I said it was a godsend, God was giving Pastor Pope a vision to do certain things. He was giving me another vision to do certain things. Then when we met, the two things merged. Yes. And so, because this church was the church of the community. And so he had actually started the work of the foundation to enhance and improve the neighborhood. I was doing it from a standpoint of if we can establish that this neighborhood is historic. So we got we got all 3 markers done under Mayor Locke Jones. Once we got the first marker done to the Hamburg massacre, Pastor Pope came and said, "Hey, you think we can get one for the church?" And so we got a second marker done for the church, and then we got one done for the community. But this was by design on my part. I said, if we get these 3 markers, because I believe that the dedication ceremony, Locke Jones said that this is the largest concentration of historical markers in North Augusta. Before these, we had no historical markers to anything African-American events. And so when he said this is the largest concentration, I'm saying to myself, if we have that much history in this small area, apparently the area is historic. And then let's see if we can get the area designated. So once when Mayor Pettit got elected, we immediately started to try to get with him just to kind of educate him on what it was, what Hamburg's story was. And he put together a committee to really look into it. Because when you're hearing that story for the first time, it's really unbelievable. And so he couldn't just take our word for it, that these things happen. And so he actually put people together to go and just research this and get as much material as he could, and he put together. But he found out what we were saying was true. And then he got on board. And when we formed the committee to try to create this as a tourist destination, with a outdoor history walk and museum. There was a foundation was in place to enhance this community already. And so many of the members that was going to be on this committee was from the foundation. And so since the foundation was already established, we decided, okay, well, that'll be the 501c3. And fast forward.
Right.
Yeah.
If I might just interject, the foundation was originally established to assist the elderly and the underprivileged families in Aiken, Edgefield, Barnwell, and Allendale counties. It was actually established in 2006. Okay? When the initiative went forth to start looking at things that we need to do in the Carrsville area in regards to the Hamburg district, Wayne is correct. We went to him and we said to him, we have a foundation that is already established. There's no need to establish another foundation. And it is a community foundation. So we will redirect by getting the official approval to make this foundation so that it would be applicable to the community. And that's what we've done. Yes, the foundation is in existence. The foundation is generating funds to support the Hamburg-Carrsville district. And we do. We need funding. We need funding. And we need people to make contributions to our foundation. And if you're interested in making a contribution to our foundation, you can make your check out to First Providence Foundation, 29841, and you can mail your donation to First Providence Foundation, 317 and a half Barton Road, North Augusta, South Carolina. And certainly those funds will go directly into the foundation funding and will continue to support our initiative. Mr. O'Brien, if you recall, back in the late 2021, 2022 timeframe, we had put together, or you had put together a proposal of how you saw, and we presented this to Mr. Petty at the time, how you saw the Carrsville Historic District formulating and going forward. Maybe you might want to share a little bit on that.
And I hope you'll talk about the vision of the wall. And let me just interject one thing. I think you know this, I think Mr. Wayne is, you know, our city council has put in the capital project sales tax, which has been approved by all citizens in Aiken County, $500,000 for infrastructure for strictly Carrsville. And the thought with that is we need to work on this street coming in here. So the vision you have of the mural and that whole process. And the good thing is that I believe, talking to our city administrator, we'll be able to, we think we can probably do a lot of that in-house, which is going to allow us to move much quicker than if we're having to bid out and wait till things happen. So anyway, I think about, you said Tom Green. It's unfortunate from the 80s to just now, quite frankly. It's like many things embarrassing, but we're going to see some progress. But go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we'll talk.
Well, before you go there, let me just say, I hear and I agree, from the 80s to now is a long time, but the good part about it, we're still persevering
Yes.
and moving forward. So the thought has not been lost.
No, it is not.
And timing is everything. Sometimes it's just in God's time. So this is what I envision, and because this area, when I say it has a lot of history, it's not just with the Hamburg massacre, but at one end of the street, at the end of Barton Road down here, is where it drops off, and then you would be in Hamburg proper, the original Hamburg. But at the other end of the road is history as well. And so on this one block here, and then of course with the neighborhood being on the other two side streets, if we start at the corner, the building up there that's now the Antique Mall was actually constructed in 1970 as Soundcraft Studios. And James Brown recorded at that. So we want to, that actually begins integration, 1970. That was when integration was mandatory. And so when we have the old history down here, which goes from the slave period, 1821, to the time it moves up here in 1929, and then you get this segregated period. We get to tell because the schoolhouse for this community was in the society building, we get to tell the period from slavery to Reconstruction to the Jim Crow segregated area, all the things that happened in there. We had the jazz acts that used to come down to North Augusta in the 30s, the musical part of it. But as you go forward, you go from segregated area to integration, and then it ends on the corner in 1970. But that is because everything now was not separated anymore. So that history from slave ships coming in and docking down in Hamburg. They had a slave market in Hamburg. So you had Africans coming into Hamburg, from Africa up the river to Hamburg. From that period all the way to integration, that whole story can be told on this one block. And so I don't even know if there's another spot where something like that can happen. And what Reverend Pope actually brought up something earlier, we have that in the society building, is the genealogy or the ancestry of this particular church. Silver Bluff was the oldest Black Baptist church in the United States. And it was founded before the American Revolution. And the American Revolution, when it took place, they captured the Silver Bluff plantation and scattered the people, and they went from there and started Springfield and First African in Savannah. But you have the American Revolutionary War period, then Springfield is there, then after Thankful was created, then you get the Civil War. So Hamburg's church was created in 1860, which was the year of secession. Civil War happens, and then freedom happens. So you have all these stories that we can tell. Well, you remember I told you Prince Rivers, they called it intendant back there, and was the intendant or the mayor of Hamburg after the war. His successor was John Gardner. So he was the second mayor of Hamburg. They were the only two mayors before Reconstruction was overthrown. But John Gardner was the fifth pastor. So after Reconstruction was overthrown, he didn't have any political power. He went into the ministry, and he became the fifth pastor of First Providence. But he was the pastor at the time Second Providence was created. So it was created under him. And so he pastored both churches until his death. But like I said, you would have a connection with those two, because those were the two mayors up there before. Yeah, and now we're working with the later mayors to kind of bring that story back up. The reason Deacon Cannon, what you said about Deacon Cannon was true. He actually was a little older. He was like 20-ish when the flood happened, so he helped bring material up. Yeah. But we would talk all the time, because he was wondering why he was asking me, why didn't I know all this? And he said, because Mom and Dad wouldn't tell us. And he started to go into, it was dangerous to talk about it. Yeah, and then the children, if you tell them, they will talk to other children, but they might be overheard. Mm-hmm. And then they'll be wondering, well, where'd you hear this from? And then they go to the family. So those hush-hushes, but things that are buried don't necessarily have to stay buried. I had the opportunity to go down to Hamburg proper. Most of it's under the golf course now. But there's a part that's still kind of undeveloped by the train trestle. But I went down there with Deacon Cannon I think he died at 100, 101, but he was 96 when I went down there with him. But he was very fit because he used to walk from his house in Carpentersville over to his job in Augusta, 96. And he'd walk across the bridge. And so whenever I would see, he didn't want to get picked up, but when I would see him, he would always let me pick him up because we would start talking. Because we would go down to Hamburg. Because he was like a kid. He'd go back down to Hamburg and then he could visualize everything that was there. And so he was telling me the church was here, the society building was over there. So he was telling me all the spots. So to be able to go down to Hamburg with a guy who remembered it like that, you know, has really helped with trying to reconstruct the story. But it's a story that, like I say, it was interesting to me because my family was living there. But then I realized its bigger impact was it's not even humongous story for the area. It is a story that changed U.S. history.
Wow. Either one of you want to tell a little bit about the folks? I mean, a lot of citizens helped literally restore this.
Well, yeah, what happened with Historic North Augusta, as we started to get the focus on it, Millage Murray was very instrumental because he worked with us, I guess, for 10, 15 years in telling the story. And, but he was part of the group with Historic North Augusta. And those guys got together, really raised the money, and they did the work themselves. To this building at the time, it was really falling apart. We know that the roof was, so you'll see it in some of the newspaper articles. When we started doing the project, the building's always in the background, then you'll see what it looked like. But they came in and they would get people to donate windows and things like that. But those guys, we have them in the building here, but they came out and did the restoration work. They could only do a certain amount of what they were doing. That's why we wanted to get some people to come in and kind of finish the project. Now this building is actually owned by the Simmons Lodge. And they would hold their lodge meetings downstairs, but we got an agreement with them to use the downstairs as a museum, and then they'll continue to meet upstairs. But
With both coming up here, is this considered the oldest building in North Augusta?
the two of them probably.
Not the same.
Yeah, that would probably, and that may be older because that building would have been built in 1860.
So that was probably built in Hamburg prior to even the society building.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and so yeah, and I think now they may be about the same age, but we know that building, that one was established in 1860 and they built it. The interesting thing about that particular church, when Deacon Cannon took me down to the rail station, he told me the church was built on stilts. It almost was like railroad, like telephone poles, you know. But he said it was built on stilts because when the flood would come, the church was above ground, you know. And he said as kids we would play under the church. And we did find a photograph of that church. Well, we found a railroad depot on stilts. So apparently they put the certain buildings.
But I mean, really, if you think about how amazing it's going to be to start from one end, you walk down here, and then to be able to come into this building, I mean, it's a museum. It literally is a museum. And
Now, see, that's what I wanted to tell you when we were across at the other. You can see the wood in here, so you don't have to take the sheetrock off because the wood is.
that's true, yeah.
So in this particular building, you can see the wood.
But there are, in the sanctuary, they use the smaller slabs.
Yeah, the small ones. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Let me show you something very interesting. This map, this is an overlay of old Hamburg with modern North Augusta. And so this would be the railroad bridge.
Yep.
Then the
River Club.
Old Fifth Street. Yeah, and then you got the course down here, and then the 13th. This bridge, I used as a focal point because the Episcopal Church,
Yeah, St. Paul's.
St. Paul's is right here, right next to the bridge.
Exactly.
Well, in Hamburg, Providence was sitting over here next to the bridge. It was directly across from St. Paul's.
You know, I meant to ask you when you were talking about Hamburg and Henry Schultz, you know, a little brevity here. There's rumor that he was so upset with Augusta because he blamed them
For stealing his bridge, basically.
that when he got buried, he made sure he was buried with not his best side.
Yeah, his back to Augusta.
Looking at Augusta.
Matter of fact, he said, I turned my back on Augusta. Yeah. And people are trying to massage that story, but the way the story came down was exactly that. This is something I wanted to, this might be something to look at. I know Henry Schultz was built on Schultz Hill. It's not on this map, it'll be on a different map. Schultz Hill, because they had put a drive-in theater up there. Sure. And so they believed that where his house was, that he, you know, the drive-in theater destroyed all that. But there was an area back behind the theater that was not included. I'm thinking that's where that house was. Wow. That still may be.
Might be.
Yeah, and take some ground penetrating radar and go in the wintertime and see if there's something.
What was that, the Hilltop Theater?
It was a Hilltop Drive-In, yeah. I don't know if we have it in here, but we did. I had some maps, and I was looking exactly where his house was, where Hilltop was, and if he was there, I don't know if they buried him right by the house, but usually in the cemetery, they bury away from the house.
This has been, gentlemen, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your time. Literally every time I'm around you two, I keep learning more and more. And
that's what we want.
Just amazing. Just very thankful for both of your leaderships. Thank you for caring. And, you know, really my prayer is that we just got to get this story told. And we need to put things in place to where we can, because there's really not anything like you said, the amount of history on this short little road is pretty phenomenal.
It is.
And finally, like I said, for so many years, it was never told. You never knew about it, you know. And kids today, they can't even imagine that.
Right.
That's true.
So talking about the educational I'm thinking now I'm a grandfather, my granddaughter would be able to really learn the truth. And that's the great thing. I do commend you and Mayor Pettit and the committee with the educational panels.
Right.
Finally telling the story the right way.
Right.
And I think doing it the way that we've done it is the right way.
Right.
So anyway, hope you've enjoyed exploring everything Hamburg-Carrsville. It's been an actual treat to be with these two gentlemen, and thank you again, and God bless. We're done.
All right.
Down by the river where the stories unfold, North Augusta's got a heart of gold, a hidden gem, one of a kind. Come explore, see what you'll find. Catch a ball game, hear the cheer. Events held throughout the year. Take a stroll where the greenway winds. Feel the history, let it shine. Or don't just visit, come and stay. Feel the magic every day. From river views to golden hues, North Augusta welcomes you. So come on down, take a ride. Let the river be your guide. South Carolina's shining bright. North Augusta feels just right.